Hey, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third episode of DSPi interview series. Today we have with us Vicente, who is the author of the DSPi port dspy.rb. Vicente, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you, Ankur, for having me.
All right. So, Vicente, first order of business, we really love to know, what got you started. We love to get some background about you, your work that you're doing, and sort of the origin story of how this port came into existence. What's the journey till you reach that point?
Sounds good. I'm Vicente. Great to meet you all. I'm a consultant and I help founders to solve the challenge of building and scaling resilient systems. And it all started a couple of years ago, when I was exposed through my work to ChatGPT and their APIs. We went through all the stages in life, like building this like massive prompts, building homegrown tooling to build the structure. We found out DSPi, the Python library,
Mhm.
and that just clicked. It just gave us the abstractions and the tooling that we needed to build our application. So we were not spending time like, how do we solve all these like
Right.
the
The
kind of
tooling
problems?
aspect.
And fast forward a couple of years, this was probably last year, March. I work in multiple languages, but my heart lives in Ruby and Rails, and because of reasons. And I realized that there was an incipient number of libraries to work with AI, which is phenomenal in the Ruby community. But there wasn't anything something like DeepI that provided the harness to work with like, not writing prompts anymore, being able to switch prompting techniques, being able to perform evaluations and down the line optimizations. So I went a little bit, I had two options, either implement Rails in Python, and Rails is like 20 years old and has contributors. I think that's impossible. Or try to surgically port parts of DSPi, the Python library, into Ruby.
Got it. Well, that sounds quite similar to story of other folks who have chose to port. And I think in a way it also kind of tells you how DSPi's signature style of tackling prompts resonates with people across languages and ports. So that's
It's like you've got a lot of I'm not trying to date you, but you've got years in the industry, and like 20 years ago, the MVC,
yeah,
the view architecture enabled
correct,
us to build web services and web apps.
correct,
And I think the SPI, I'm trying to think about it more like a paradigm now because everyone's
got it,
implementing the DSPi air quotes
right,
paradigm. And I think it's the same thing. Like it's an MVC moment for AI. Like now we've got the
right.
right attractions to build a tool and the right conventions so we can build an ecosystem and a community around it. So I think it's exciting. I don't know where this thing is headed to, but it's exciting.
Right, sort of the same boat as you are in terms of. I think we're just at the very start of the AI sort of revolution. So that was a bit about how you reached and sort of started the port and what is the motivation behind it. So there is a comment somewhere by a Python developer who also happens to be a Ruby developer, and he's like that DSPy looks more beautiful and intuitive in Ruby than it looks in Python. I
Sorry.
don't know yeah, if you encountered that tweet, and I couldn't disagree more. So kind of moving on from that to the next question. One thing I noticed is that you chose pretty early on to adopt BAML, which is, so it's just so two things. I think not everybody knows about
Mhm.
BAML, and then obviously, I was looking into the repository and I saw that you did some amount of benchmarking as well. So if you can talk about why you chose that path as sort of the default
Yeah.
for
I think, I mean, the deep down, I was curious to see, BAML, I think it stands for Boundary AI Markup Language.
markup language. Yeah, correct.
And it's more than the schema, but I think that the promise is just like you can cut down token consumption by a good chunk, like I don't know, 40% or something like that.
Hmm.
And I was curious about it, and I think the power of DSPi, whatever flavor you're using, is that you can
Hmm.
actually put together pretty quick a benchmark and actually make decisions based on empirical data. Like, so you don't have to make assumptions just like, is this gonna be better or not? It's true that I had to figure out how to turn the DSPi.rb type system into the schema, but that was like 75% there.
Okay.
But anyway, so what is BAML? BAML, it's a way of defining schemas, alternative to a JSON schema. It
Mm-hmm.
looks a lot more like TypeScript, so it uses and that's good because LLMs are still familiar with TypeScript and they know how to parse it and stuff like that. And it has the downside. I don't know if it's a downside or a trade-off, more like a trade-off, where that prevents you from using structured outputs in OpenAI or Anthropic or Friends or Gemini, because structured outputs are they take on a JSON schema. So that's what it is. And I started it because I was curious to see whether it actually would hold to the promise, and it actually did, but in very specific cases. And I think people has not seen yet the power of things like BAML, because mostly everyone that I talk to, they are still very close to writing their prompts manually, and
Correct.
they are not leveraging the type system to actually model the prompt. Like the prompt engineering and the context engineering, it still happens writing the prompt.
Yeah.
Now, so what I'm trying to say, long story short, is that BAML really shines when you have like a rich signature, like you have a deep set of a definition, an input schema, and an output schema,
Bounce.
objects. And that's where the savings come. So that also my friends were here just like, what the hell are you doing, man?
Exactly.
But I think that was another example, just like someone came up with an idea that it's
Right.
unusual. I mean, we're familiar with it because it looks like CSV, but it's just like,
CSV.
okay, someone's thinking out there around the corners, looking around the corners, and this is interesting. So I implemented something like that. But Tune is instead of a BAML, it's an alternative to encode schemas. Tune, it's an alternative to encode the payload. Like when we usually use JSON, this would be. I think the internet's got caught up with the fact.
It just went viral, right?
Yeah, it just like, well, it just says CSV. What the hell? This is bullshit. And it just like, well, if you look deeper, it supports something really interesting. Again, like nested signatures, like nested objects, and that's just a symptom that people out there are still not are still encoding or writing manually their prompts, and they're not taking fully advantage of a type system. It's true though, and it's somewhere in one of the blogs I wrote. I wrote another of those benchmarks. They are like very like benchmarks to me sitting at home with cloud code and putting things together. So it's nothing super scientific, but it allows you to get some data out of it, some conclusions out of it, draw some conclusions. So did see some of the models struggling parsing the tune payload, but overall they look pretty good. And it's just a matter of time that these things get better at other formats. It's just like the fact that it's just CSV. It's a good symptom that in the future probably these models either we can train them, we can train our prompts, we can fine tune something in there, or OpenAI or Anthropic, the big ones, are gonna just make it better.
I think the law of nature would work in terms of whatever is efficient. However, it's quite funny to see how BAML has existed for so long and yet few people know about it.
Yeah.
And just came and it took a life of its own, and people were like, "Hey," because it looks so intuitive. Everybody sees why was this not there in the first place, right? I mean, people just use the CSV analogy and sort of think that, hey, just give me the data, comma separated, and I'll handle the
Yeah,
rest.
I think it's also part of our nature. We have emotional responses to things,
Right.
and the only difference with the digital world is that it stays there forever. So I
Yeah.
think that's
Absolutely.
part of our nature.
Yeah. By the way, I just for the sake of it, and I went and did a listing of how many of the SDKs are getting enhancement requests to implement Tune and how many have actually implemented.
Uh-huh.
So I tell you, pretty much all of them have either an open issue or people discussing it, or somebody has raised a PR, and some library owners have said, hey, you know what, hang in there, let's see if this catches on. Not directly, but they said we need some time,
Yeah.
and it certainly has captured the my consciousness of. Okay, so I think kudos to you for being sort of the early first on BAML. So I've got another question for you, which is something I asked Vikram, who
Mhm.
manages the TypeScript port AXLLM. So how do you go about with the porting thing? For example, you know, there are a whole bunch of optimizers,
Mhm.
and and then there are all these modules that are there, and obviously, I think the only way to maintain parity is someone came and dropped $1 million on you and say that maintain the port, right?
Still waiting, man. I'm still waiting for $1 million.
Yeah. So how do you decide what to port and what not? And how do you keep a track of the Python project? Like, what's your workflow and mindset behind?
That's great. So how do I decide what to port or not? Because DSPi.rb, it's not, even though I use AI, Codex and Claude, it's not a one-to-one port. So I do sit down and try to design what's the best API that we can serve in Ruby to actually to solve these problems, right? So and that means that I ported only two of the optimizers, for example, and I'm still working on them, and I'll tell you in a second.
Right.
I have imported the other ones because I knew that there were some things in there that were old, and they were actually, you can read either the original documentation or the source code, just like, we live in this here because back in the day it was a good optimizer, but now it's been superseded by MyPro or GPA, right? So I use that. I use the knowledge. I tried to read the knowledge that I got about the library. I made the mistake. I should be talking more to Omar and Thomas. I met Thomas a few weeks ago. And Omar, he's been phenomenal, just like supporting me on social media. And I should be talking a lot more to them because there's so much to learn from them. And it's just like straight from the source, basically. So how do I approach, or I approach in the past, porting the optimizers? I read the documentation, and by me, I mean Claude as well.
Right.
And then I went over the source and mapped it out. And I think it's even public in one of the issues of the documents, Markdown documents that I put together
Right.
for
Right.
the process. I mapped the whole algorithm from test to source code bottom up. And I
Okay.
put it 101 to a working version in Ruby. And then I started adapting it to Ruby syntax, or things that decisions that I made in the Ruby library, like the type system configuration. And even now I'm working on a tool like
Mm-hmm.
Rails. I don't know how familiar you are with Rails.
Look, I used it. I mean, it was my first framework. Then I moved to Django.
Great. So it's perfect because what I'm doing is like I'm working now on an interface around optimizers to treat to manage optimized prompts as if they were database migrations, which is not, it doesn't solve every single problem out there.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you're envisioning this as a database migration, right? Like, is
Yeah,
it like Ruby ecosystem thing or
it's
Rails ecosystem?
It's an idea that I had. It depends, first of all, where do you run your optimizer, right? In optimizing, sorry, no pun intended, optimizing
Yeah.
first for people that run their optimizers locally and they train their prompts and then they deploy them, right? Through just like regular processes. And I think it fits in there for that workflow. The way Rails and many other frameworks manage database migrations, really, it's good because you keep track of migration files. Like I'm adding a column
Correct.
table, and then you
Understood.
to the
Yeah.
migration, and you've
Right.
got a file with the schema and the source of truth, right? And then
Okay. Got it.
then when you deploy that to production, it applies the same stage, the same.
Okay. Okay. And now I understand what you're saying. So basically, the optimizer going through a loop and sort of refining something, you're sort of documenting every step or sort of describing it.
Yeah,
So that becomes your spec, and then essentially you just read it and you have the what do you call the function, and then you go through those
exactly.
steps.
What
Yeah,
I'm looking at is at a like planned decision,
got it.
right? So
Okay.
I've got my V0 signature.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna up
Mm-hmm.
for first time.
Understood.
I make some decisions regarding the gold standard that I'm using, the mix of the distribution of my gold standard, the algorithms, the parameters,
Mm-hmm.
how hard I'm gonna go in the sampling or not, and I let it run in my laptop, and that generates a prompt, right? It's just like
Mm-hmm.
after a few trials, it generates a prompt, and that goes
Right.
to my Git repo, and then when I deploy it, I just
Mm-hmm.
flip a switch. It's just like, okay, the signature is gonna come from that file, basically, right? And that's what I mean, like managing prompts
Understood.
as database migrations in the first place, because that's the one of the first steps to actually start doing things a little bit more sophisticated, which I'm not planning to do in the short term, but I would like to be in a place in the future where I'm continuously running in production the
Mm-hmm.
optimizer in the background, so I don't have to do that, and the system sort of self-evolves, But that's
Got it.
a beast.
So this is essentially in a way prompt versioning, prompt storage, retrieval of the prompt, something that ML Flow and a couple of other frameworks have started offering. And you can toggle between the prompts without sort of redeploying. So are you looking at also without redeploying, just changing the prompt and at runtime it, or because it's a database migration? So I'm
Yeah,
assuming any changes you make to, let's say, an optimized prompt, which now is pure text, right? It is not your signature anymore, correct? So
exactly.
yeah,
So the answer is yes, but in order to get there, I want to reach this
got
point
it.
where I'm deploying new versions of the prompt.
Understood. Got it.
It also fits my workflow right now for the projects that I'm working on. So
Mhm.
I don't think my clients and I are ready yet to actually, start optimizing in the background, which is really
Got
interesting.
it.
It also
Got it.
changes the way we work around and then the way we
Mhm.
instrument all the signatures and prompts and stuff like that, right? So that
Got
was
it.
another thing I wanted to do with the DSPi.rb from first, from the, out of the box instrumentation, open telemetry, deploys things to sends over things to
Got it.
languages, and soon New Relic and Honeycomb.
Got
So
it.
I needed to see, I don't need like Neo's metric vision to see what's going on. It's fun.
Got
It
it.
will be fun
Got
though,
it.
but I need it.
Got it. No, I think observability and sending all the traces and everything to open telemetry is kind of very important.
Mhm.
Besides that, cost of the tokens,
Yeah.
budgets. Yeah, I think these are key for anyone with anything non-trivial in production.
Yeah. And you have to have eyes on what's going on there. Otherwise, it's just like it's a black box. One of the
Right.
projects that I worked, and sorry if I'm going on a tangent, so let me know
No,
if I'm.
no, absolutely. Please go ahead.
One of the projects I worked, we were, generating, writing emails basically, and, doing the RAG and injecting the context and stuff like that. And it was hard to evaluate the quality of a free form text. So we had to, come up with a G eval framework or something like that. Get come up with a few dimensions so to see whether this like text is actually meeting our expectations. And without observability, you're just like tailing logs, and that means that it's just making something that should be really easy to do. You're just making it harder, and no one's gonna do it in the end.
Makes sense. So, uh, this project that we talked about kind of intrigued me. So, just want to hear more about the kind of work you do and and how sort of the framework that you have. When I say framework, I mean DSPi.rb.
Mhm.
How do you bring that into those projects? And has there been a point where you're like, hey, you know what? When I do this project, I'm also before that I have to implement this here so that I can use it. Right?
Well,
MCP is quite sort of came up this year.
it really depends. I do way too many things. That's my problem. I either build software or build teams who build software. So that's my strength and weakness at the same time.
Got it. You're wearing two hats at the same time.
Yeah, or depending on the project, I just switch roles. I don't know why, but that's my sweet spot. Anyway, so there's projects where introducing a third or a second language or platform like Ruby, it doesn't make sense. So we can fall back to Python, which is what we've done in the past.
Got it.
And there's projects that are, they are already running in Ruby on Rails. So basically, the decision to use the dspy.rb or not depends a lot more on the shape of the team. Who is the client that I'm going to be working? Is that a greenfield project? Like, do I have the
Mhm.
power to define the stack from the early beginning? So it goes a little bit beyond that. It's a little bit, as usual, those technical decisions that we think they're technical, they're basically human, right? That you need to take into account the shape of the team, the incentives around the product, and if the company behind the product can actually afford adding a new language or not.
I mean, there are a lot of every project brings its unique set of constraints, and I think by wearing these two hats, you can decide whether you want to manage people or the code base and what at which given day.
Yeah, or manage cloud codes. No, I'm just kidding. That
Got it. So that makes perfect sense. Oh, okay, so I was going through the Ruby code base, and when I did the same with the AXLLM code base, also, there's one thing that sort of struck me that the Python port kind of had it easy because of light LLM, right?
Mhm.
Right? It just gave them everything out of the box in terms of a big chunk of things that you need to wrestle with on a constant basis.
Yeah.
which is new APIs coming from the frontier model, changes to the APIs, new parameters. When I looked at the Ruby world, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not from the Ruby world, but do you have something similar?
Yes.
And okay, go
Sorry.
ahead. And if yes, then why isn't your code base
The
using
thing is
that?
that things have changed inside of
Okay.
my mind and in the Ruby community in the last few months so much that it's really crazy. So there's what we call the equivalent of light LLM. It's called Ruby LLM, authored by Carmine Paolino. I think
Okay.
you've been chatting with him on X or Twitter, whatever
Right.
it's right
Right.
now.
But I didn't know it's him behind it.
I mean, it does more things. I mean, it's not just like a proxy because Light LLM, it's basically I'm your proxy to the world and you don't have
Ah,
to worry
okay.
about it. And he supports that. He gives you just like, I support this like hundreds of models and providers. So you can
Got it.
use a unified API. It's perfect.
Ah, okay. Didn't know that.
If I recall correctly, they fulfill the same thing, but they even go a little bit in a different direction where they allow you to deploy a proxy, in your
Hmm.
network and stuff like that.
Okay.
That's a
Got it.
different direction, but functionally, they fulfill the same purpose.
Hmm.
I started with the first few iterations of DSPi.rb. I started using Ruby LLM.
Hmm.
It was when I got to implementing structure outputs and observability that I needed to tap into the actual official ish or the low level driver, like
Ah, okay.
the client that talks to OpenAI, the client that talks to Gemini, and stuff like that. So, and that was a few months ago, which in AI time, it's like 7 years ago. And because I was like, well, I need to be able to tap into certain information to
Right.
instrument all these events. And then
Hmm.
also need to tap into the low level driver to be able to inject the right schema and the structure inputs and stuff like that. So, and around the same time, the folks at Stainless, they
Right.
created and they're still maintaining them, the official Ruby SDKs for Anthropic and OpenAI. So I was just like, well, let's use those. And
Got
then
it.
as people ask me for, as there's demand, which I'm going to tell you in a second, there is, and someone just
Oh,
put
okay.
together a pull request with the Ruby LLM integration. As the demand,
Oh,
as people demanded, bring back the Ruby LLM integration, and that came up like a couple of months ago. Kieran, which is another personality in the Ruby
right.
ecosystem, they built Cora. It's a really cool email agent. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent.
No.
He was just like, hey, I love this like DSPi paradigm, and I
Hmm.
think this is what we need. However, we are built on top of Ruby LLM, and we cannot just switch. And it's just like that makes total sense.
Got it.
So it was yesterday. It was funny, but it was exactly yesterday while I was giving a talk here in New York. Posts on Twitter just like, you know what? I just moved this thing over, one of our projects to DSPi, and I'm also contributing with the Ruby LLM migration
Wow.
or integration to DSPi.rb. So it's just like, fuck, everything happening.
Wow. That's great news. All right. So it was interesting to know this because I think when I was going through the ports, I just felt that anybody who's making a port in any language will kind of have to make some subset of decisions which all of you who are making ports are doing. And I think whether your community has something like LLM Lite or not, sort of impacts the amount of code that one person would have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've been disconnected from Node and TypeScript a few months since my last project in that technology, which means again that it feels like it was 7 years ago. But I think that Ruby it's embracing. So I'm not worried about Ruby not embracing AI because we the community are doing that, and
Right.
and there's a ton of momentum and a ton of people just like with their eyes on these libraries. And I think Ruby LLM it's a phenomenal.
Yeah, I think the Rumi community is here to stay for a very, very long time. I mean, that's a given how vibrant and how beautiful the language is, right? All right, so I've got a question for you. There's a lot of buzz about agentic this, agentic that, right? Which is and with passing time, you have a lot of patterns emerging around it, like to-do list pattern. Then you have a graph-based sort of orchestration happening. Then you have deep agents and long running agents, and a lot of langchain has that middleware architecture where they have come up so that you can build long running agents and sort of summarize compact, and you can create middleware for whatever you want. So given that you do a bit of consulting, building tools. How do you see, like, do you see yourself getting into the orchestration and the agentic bit? Or do you see that you will have to give an out of the box implementation, which is very strong for MCP? What's next for dspy.rb in terms of roadmap?
That's good. So I think I like to refer to the Anthropic has written 3 articles in the last year.
Right. Yeah.
And I think they were correct at even when they started publishing about this is a workflow, this is an agent, and then they
Right.
added a little complexity, and then another. Then we're talking about harnesses right now, agentic
Correct.
harnesses.
Harnesses. Yep.
So I think, I mean, this is my prediction, which is probably gonna be wrong in 3 months, but I think
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
other industries are gonna feel the same moment that we're experiencing with coding agents. I think
Mhm.
the next step is gonna be like doctors, lawyers, just like
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
level of productivity and accuracy while being in the loop and in control at the steering wheel. So I think everything's hopefully gonna go that way, but I don't know. In my personal experience and professional experience till today, and what I see in the next weeks, I think there's still a lot of problems that could be, we could tap into the power of LLMs to solve. But
Mhm.
I urge people to just like take baby steps, like start with a workflow,
Got it.
and make sure you're measuring the right things. Is this solving the right problem? Are you getting the right outputs? Cool. Let's add a level of a complexity if you need it, because sometimes you don't need that full, codex CLI for,
Mhm.
for to build an email, to write an email. So I think what I've seen, there's a lot of people conflating agents and workflows,
Mhm.
conflating the need for an agent when they actually just need a workflow, maybe a 3 4
Mhm.
workflow, and we are already doing pretty advanced stuff. Like a chat is just a workflow. It's like
Right.
you're tapping into the intent of the query, you're
Mhm.
clarifying that, and you're doing stuff with it. That's already it's a loop, but it's a silly workflow in the end, which is it's a silly boring workflow. So that's
Got
what
it.
I see so far, which again might be wrong tomorrow because things change every other week.
Mhm.
Where do I see the DSPi.rb evolving? One of the things that I'm doing right now, I stopped coding. I mean, the thing we talked about, the migrations.
Right.
I'm just like, I need to stop and start investing on education and adoption. Like that's why I started writing this like short, easy to digest tutorials the last few weeks.
Correct.
We're gonna continue
Yep.
doing that, so
Okay.
people can actually see just like, oh, this is why you need a signature. Oh, this is why you
Right.
need a module in here.
Got it.
And so that's going to be my most immediate effort,
Mhm.
because it's not complicated, but there's a little bit of a learning curve. And especially for people coming from a world where it's unstructured, they're writing monolithic prompts and everything's
Right.
slammed into the same blob of text.
Right.
I think people need a little bit of guidance
Education.
in defining the responsibilities and put them away and separate them. So
Got
that's my immediate effort. What is going to happen next? It's likely I want to double down on optimizers and make them available to people,
it. Mhm.
because there's something that I would love to talk to Omar. And if Omar and Thomas, you guys someday, I'm lucky that you guys are listening to this. We as a community around the DSPi paradigm, I think we need to reframe the conversation. The part of the audience, it's a lot of smart people building algorithms and
Right.
creating workflows and agents.
Right. Right.
But there's a lot of people who have a lot of interests, which are basically product engineers and business people. And we
Right.
need to have a product mindset to, make these tools available and closer to them. And that's what I'm trying to do that right now with, my little
Got it.
effort in adoption. So that's one thing. And then the last thing, where's the DSPi.rb going? I know where it's going, but it's really gonna depend where I see where the pool is coming from. I think there's a natural integration beyond with Rails. Rails has a set of like conventions and tooling around that makes your work
Correct.
more productive. And by now your work and actually your coding agents work makes it a lot more productive. I would like to integrate a little bit tighter in the future with Rails. And at the moment, it doesn't mean that DSPi it's not compatible with Rails. It's just like you need to run a workflow or an
Mhm.
agent, just like put it in a scikit background job or a solid queue job, and it works. It's
Yeah.
out of the box. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. I don't know, in the next few months.
So to summarize, you're going to focus on educating the community, right? That's one on the DSPi way of doing things, DSPi.rb way of doing things. The second thing is in terms of what comes on the roadmap, from what I hear from you, is wait and watch, see what is the adoption, where things are moving, what is needed, and pick and choose only those things. Third is what you feel is that, I mean, based on what you said, I feel that you have a lot of empathy for those who are in the application development space, and your signatures, your design should kind of be easy for them to adopt. And the
Mhm.
last being is that how to make how to do a first class integration with Ruby on Rails, right? So that it's kind of intuitive, maybe sits in the active, what do they call it? Active models. That's
There's the active record,
active record. Okay, yeah,
and
and
that's a model to interface.
models.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think that's the gist, and I think you've got a pretty rational way of looking at things. Cool. So I think this kind of brings me towards the last question, right? Which is effectively, do you see? So this is a very broader question and not necessarily dspy.rb. Where do you see the tech industry going in a year's time in terms of productivity, in terms of, yeah, let's just stick with productivity of a single developer.
I was talking about this. I don't know. I feel I've been talking about exactly that last week, like nonstop. I think we are the early adopters. I mean, people in our area where we are the
Right,
spy AI stuff and using AI coding agents specifically. There's a lot of people that there are skeptical, and it's fair because it's a paradigm change. Things are changing.
right,
Like, I don't think things are gonna go back to what they were like a year ago. I don't think so. I'm hoping that everyone embraces the way. Why am I so excited about using coding agents? It's because I can think strategically. I can zoom out as a software engineer and assess,
mhm,
why am I doing this? Where am I
right,
spending my time? Right? Like I'm building a cathedral, and I can actually get in my drone and look at people using the cathedral, and it's just like, okay, I need to do these things, make these modifications so they have a good experience. And also, but there's also the catch where the cathedral needs like windows and doors, but I don't need to spend like 3 weeks, thinking about where to source the wood, the iron, and the glass to build them and put them together. I just have Claude doing that for me, and they are, pretty good doors. They work. They open and close,
got it,
and let people in and out. So I think I'm hoping that over the next few years. A year ago, I was skeptical, 100%. I was just like, this is shit. And I'm hoping that people start absorbing these new tools and
got
start
it,
seeing that it's not magic. It still requires a lot of experience and a lot of hand holding, and a lot of scar tissue, that the only way to accumulate it is by learning and making mistakes, the way we learn,
right,
basically. I hope
right,
that people embrace that and see that there's really a way to think higher. And like, and an example is like, I've been able to build something that people are finding useful, and I'm also at the same time can actually spend time thinking about, okay, what do they need? I need to spend more time doing adoption things. I can actually go to New York here and give a talk. I can talk to you, so I can think. That's what I mean, thinking strategically where I'm spending my time. And I think that's the power of these new tools.
got it. You know, you are certainly optimistic, and so am I. And I'm pretty sure the Ruby community is kind of going to enjoy listening to the talk. And thank you, Vincent, for the time you spent with us today. And here's wishing you all the best for all the stuff you'll be doing on the DSPi.
Thank you so much, Ankur. Good luck with the next interviews.